Welcome to the live printing impressions webinar, How Folding Technology Can Reduce Costs and Overcome Labor Shortages, sponsored by MBO America. I'm Mark Michelson, Editor-in-Chief of Printing Impressions and the host for today's event. Before we get started, let me take a second to point out the resources widget at the bottom of your console. It looks like an open book. If you missed a Tech Tips video we played leading up to the webinar, you can always click the widget to access our Tech Tips PDF, as well as other webinar resources. And you can download the slides from today's presentations. We'll also have a Q&A after our formal presentation, so please be sure to submit any questions you may have during the course of today's webinar. All right, so let's get started. You know, there's no secret that printing and finishing providers are facing a severe labor shortage when it comes to staffing their post-press operations, combined with ever tighter profit margins and quick turnaround demands. One of the key ways to address these problems are by automating finishing processes. In fact, the printer survey respondents from the newly published State of the Industry report from economist Andy Paparozzi at Printing United Alliance indicated that binding and finishing equipment as the #1 capital investments that printers plan to make in the coming year. One printer who's already made a key finishing investment is Wesley Gingrich of Little Mountain Printing, a commercial and publication print provider. Wes will discuss his recent investment in a top-of-the-line MBO automated combi folding and stacking solution. Little Mountain Printing's experience using manually adjusted machines, continuous-style feeders, and shingle table deliveries led Wes and his management team to find a new solution that could increase productivity while requiring less labor. The solution came in the form of a fully automatic combi folding machine with pallet feeding and automatic stacking, which was a big departure from their existing machine setup. Wes will discuss Little Mountain Printing's upgrade journey and compare production rates before and after the finishing equipment installation. And you'll also hear from Lance Martin, Vice President of Marketing at MBO America and combi America. Lance will provide additional information on Little Mountain Printing's folder installation, as well as some of the ways he's seeing printers and binders respond to today's current labor shortages. Okay, Lance, let me hand it over to you.
Hey, thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. I'm honored to be here today. Thanks, NAPCO, for putting this on, and I hope everybody enjoys this presentation. We have an opportunity today to talk to a great application, a mid-sized printer that is making a big move in automation to reduce labor, streamline his bindery effort. And I think it's applicable to a lot of people in some form or fashion. So I thought I would get started today just a little bit about MBO America and combi America. Recently, combi purchased the MBO group, and I think a lot of people don't know. So I know this sort of a slide is always enjoyed by a lot of the people viewing today. So I'll review it just real quickly. About a year and a half ago, MBO Post-Press Solutions was purchased by combi, which is a Tokyo, Japan-based company. The MBO group is made up of 5 real separate groups. 4 of them are reporting to the parent company, MBO Post-Press Solutions in Germany, which there in turn reports to combi of Japan. MBO America, the H&H division out of Bielefeld, Germany. Then MBO Post-Press is in Oppenweiler. And then MBO Machina, Portugal is our manufacturing facility. And then, of course, we at MBO America look at all of our partners as part of our company also. And that includes finishing component OEMs, for example, gluing systems and third-party stacking solutions and such that we don't have a core business in. And then also with many of the press OEMs, especially on the roll-fed continuous forms inkjet side. MBO America is I believe, still the largest division of MBO Post-Press Solutions. And we provide a full service and support for both legacy and new equipment. Our facility in Marlton, New Jersey is made up of a warehouse, which is a parts distribution center, along with showroom, and all of our headquarters is here for activities in North America. Just a quick bit about MBO America. We've changed a lot over time, and this might not be well known to everybody, so I thought I'd throw this slide in real quick. We have, at MBO America, developed more of an integrated solution provider and expanded on our core technology of folding. The first category you see is commercial sheet folding, and that is what we're going to be discussing today. It's still our core technology. We pioneered most of the methods and proud of them, and we're still developing them and still investing R&D research money into them, and very proud of that. And we're continuing to provide automated solutions in that business. But along with that, what's developed is our roll-fed finishing division, which actually is quite large. In America, it has overtaken in sales volume finishing systems for compared to commercial sheet folding from sheet-fed offset. It is a very robust market. And then we added die cutting up to B2 sheet size to support the rest of our presses, and also has a great digital print footprint. And then, of course, the H&H division, that was a rebranding. Many of you know the Herzog and Hyman name, which is a miniature folding originally, and then when Komori purchased MBO, we rebranded that to H&H. And it's still the specialty small PI folds, pharma folds, pharmaceutical processing leaflets, those sorts of things. That's their specialty. And then, of course, now the automation, which we're going to talk about today, and along with software that goes along with the machinery. Komori America, real quick, is based in presses of all types. It has packaging presses, both digital and offset, commercial presses, both digital and offset, and then some of the less known currency presses, the intaglio processes, along with printed electronics, which are well known today, such as in thin film transistors and small printed flexible electronics. And then the automation connection is again with KP Connect, and that'll be similar to the data manager solution that MBO provides to allow connection throughout the printing process. I think I'll take this slide, and thanks for letting me explain MBO, but Wesley, if you'd like to pick it up from here and explain a little about your company and how you got to the position you're in.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. And as you can see, our mission statement there is to provide quality advertising and marketing solutions that benefit our customers and neighbors, honoring God and His creation with a biblical business model and a desire for excellence in all we do. We are located in central Pennsylvania, and my dad purchased the business in '94. As you can see there, I think it was doing about 200,000 in sales, and I have worked alongside my dad, and we have built the business over the years. In 1999, my father purchased the Strausstown fish wrapper, and you might say, what is the fish wrapper? And how did the fish wrapper get its name? Well, the fish wrapper is a word that came from years ago. They used to wrap fish in newspaper, and when somebody said something that was maybe a little bit questionable, weren't sure if they were telling the truth, the saying would be, you must have read that in the fish wrapper. Anyhow, today, when somebody, says a joke or something like that in the local community, sometimes they'll say, oh, you probably read that in the fish wrapper. And the fish wrapper is a free publication. It has stories with a moral, positive, upbuilding reading, and it's a free paper, free publication, funded fully by advertising. When we purchased it, it only had about 3,200 copies as its circulation. We've grown that to 90,000 copies. going out every 2 weeks. So this particular paper has kind of helped us invest in equipment. It's given us some revenue. It's given us stable work as well. Every 2 weeks we have the publication to put out, and we want to thank the Lord. It's been profitable over the years, and we've been able to use some of these funds to invest in new equipment. So in 2003, I would have graduated from high school and then worked for my dad full time, and went right into the press room and learned four color printing. And I was press operator for many years. I've operated about every piece of binder equipment out there as well. In 2009, our current facility here, 35,000 square feet, it was actually a fairly large jump for us. And but we've currently filled the building, and this year we're currently projected to do about $7 million in sales. So besides the fish wrapper, we would do a lot of catalog printing, other publications, and commercial printing for both the end user, and also we do some work for some trade. We do some trade work for printers, brokers, designers, things like that as well. So we've had growth every year for the last 15 years at least. Even last year, I think at the end of the year, our growth was about 17%. So we have seen growth every year. We are currently a one-shift operation, and we prefer to stay that way. It is difficult to hire help for second shift, and also, one shift promotes family values, things like that. Also, it actually gives us some flexibility. Every now and then we'll get a printer, a job drop out from somewhere else, printer couldn't turn it around or something. We'll get a call, and they'll say, hey, can you fit this job? And so it actually gives us some flexibility on some large jobs, some quick turnarounds. We do allow our employees to work overtime, and so at times we can fit in some pretty large projects. Now, this is our busiest time of year, and it seems like printers, for the most part, are busy around the country. So I'll say that, and then you'll give me a call, and we won't be able to do it. But anyhow, so our run lengths vary from 200 to 150,000. I wouldn't necessarily say that run lengths keep getting shorter. I would say they pretty well have tapered off for us. I would say our average run length is, maybe 4,000 pieces, kind of in that range, especially when it comes to catalogs. Like I said earlier, we do invest in equipment. We try to invest a couple $100,000 into equipment every year. And this year we purchased, I believe, two cutters and then the MBO folder. And so one of the questions that may come up is how did you manage to operate under COVID, or how were things in your business? Yes, things did slow down drastically right when, the middle of March when everything shut down. And thankfully, as far as from a financial standpoint, we were actually 45% ahead in first quarter. Now, second quarter, I think, was down about 10% or so. But one of the things we did is many nonprofits that we do work for, they were planning to have events, and we switched them over to doing appeal mailings to get donations, things like that. We also have quite a number of internal projects. So I mentioned the fish wrapper earlier, and one of the things we do is we take all the articles from those publications, and yes, it's free when you pick it up in the grocery store or restaurant, things like that. But we take all those articles and we take about 5 years worth of articles, and we compile them into a hardcover book, and it's easy to find articles. We index them, things like that, and these books we publish then internally, and we do that in our slow times. So we have a couple projects like this. We have our own line of cookbooks is another thing we have. We also have some projects that the customers understand that we will do them in our slow time. And so all these internal projects is actually what we switched over to in March and April during COVID. Normally our slow time would be July, beginning of August, and but during COVID, we just went right to those projects and did all those, and we were glad we did, because in our particular area, in June, things were back in full swing, especially for printing. We did, catalogs for manufacturers that produced hospital beds and things like that. Our area is very heavy in manufacturing, so we do a lot of catalogs for a lot of different manufacturers, and most of those never closed down. Some of them switched to other products, and so yes, we did a lot of catalogs for all of those. Another example of that would be the shed companies. The lumber prices have really increased, or they've gone up and gone down. I'm not sure where all, but at the time, companies were putting their shed prices in their catalogs, and after about 3 or 4 printings of catalogs, most of them got wise and took the actual pricing out and added a price list with their catalog. But yeah, we definitely were busy. Again, in our particular area here, most churches went back to normal services after about 4 weeks, so we were able to again do church bulletins, things like that. We also we manage a large tool show event in September every year, and we actually sell the booths, and we have built relationships over the years with all the vendors of that. And we do quite a bit of catalog work prior to the show, and we actually did that in September as well, even in 2020. The local sheriff in the area there actually encouraged us to move through with it, and actually attendance ended up being very similar to the previous year. So that's kind of how we dealt with COVID. Yes, there were a couple months that reduction in sales, but overall we managed to pull through fine. So as far as the local business climate, as you know, labor is definitely a challenge. Actually, in our local area here, at one point, I think earlier this year, the unemployment rate is 5%, I believe, in this area. And actually, at one point, they said in our county, there were 5,000 more job openings than available workers. So definitely a challenge in our area to find help. So that's a challenge for us, but we've been able to find employees. One of the things with buying newer equipment that's easier to operate, that has really helped us, is we can actually hire and train. You don't have to find somebody that's 30 years in the printing industry. We can find, a younger person, with the newer technology, computer technology, automated setups, you can have a maintenance guy who knows equipment for years, but you can have some newer help on some of this newer equipment, including the MBO folder, for example. So, okay, and faster turnaround times. Even in a time when you can't get paper for 3 months, I think all of our customers still expect to get their jobs in less than 2 weeks. So sales and volume continue to increase, and continue to have demand for short, medium run lengths. Also, you know how it is. You're always running that big job, and now you get a job that needs to be done immediately. And so definitely a lot of times that you need to break in and with a different project. And so that's the one benefit of automated equipment. This automated folder allows us to break in and fold a different job, and then go back to what you were doing. So yeah, we continue to see growth in the fish wrapper, also booklets, catalog printing as well. However, we would like to stay as a one shift operation if possible. So that makes a challenge for us as well. So moving into the next slide. So what we had is we had 2 MBO folders, buckle folders, and they were fairly old, have continuous feeders on them, but at the beginning of this year, since December is our busiest time, we looked at what we could do to get through December. At least November, December, everything hits us at once. And so one of the things that we looked at is how could we speed up our folding operation. We had one of the folders set up as 16s, the other is 8s. However, we still, we got a bunch of other jobs that you're always changing the folder up and moving to different setups, even though you tried to have 2 folders set up a certain way. And on top of that, the machines, we weren't running extremely fast. Some jobs you may have one person on the feeder and one person on the delivery. So, with the labor shortages, we were thinking, how can we get this down to one person plus a faster machine? All right, we do mostly signature work. I believe I touched on all the points there on that slide. I think I'm going to move to the next one.
Hey, Wes.
Sure.
On this slide, I just wanted to point out to the audience, I think in travels around the United States and Canada, I think this is a very common situation. Most of the folders are continuous buckle folders in the United States. For the, I say that categorically, and it's fairly true. They don't die. MBO folders, for that matter, most folders just don't die. They repair them and they keep them around. And you can walk into most shops and you'll find them running 4,000 or 5,000 an hour, 6,000 an hour on full sheets. And it's kind of the way it is. They have short little deliveries. I think you can see in this picture on the left side, there's that tiny little 1 foot or 2 foot conveyor table. And that's kind of the way most of the folders in the United States through the 90s and the early 2000s were put in. Automated folders and automated deliveries were not all that popular back then. So one of the things, this setting up a folder to run a particular job was fairly common. And you end up with a lot of people, rather than doing a changeover, they try to move from machine to machine per job, and crews move job to job. And boy, I'll tell you, it's very difficult. You're not the only one that experienced that difficulty. I've heard this from a lot of people. I think the audience might identify with that. It's not quite like you think it is. The make readies on those, even though they're set up to run an 8 and a 16 all the time, or whatever that fold is, they still take time. You many times are losing that. There's literally idiosyncrasies between machines that operators forget, and there's a roller that's wore out on one side on an older machine that they forget about when they move the job, and it takes them 10 minutes to figure it out, and so on and so on and so on. So it is difficult, and I think changing out of that environment into what you guys did it should be pretty interesting for the audience. I'll let you go ahead and talk about your goals.
Okay, so our goals, one operator instead of 2, and less waste. Also, currently we have a Horizon stitch liner and the Mark III, and that is for our flat sheet collating, and that continues to get busier and busier. And so we were thinking, well, our Mueller, our stitcher, is currently available for more catalog work. If we could bring the run line, or bring our break point. Currently, we, if it's 5,000 sheets or 5,000 quantity, we put it on the Mueller. If it was less than that, we would put it on the stitch liner. So we were thinking, well, if we had automated folder set up, and it wouldn't take so long to fold the job, we may move that down to 4,000 just to help relieve the stitch liner. So, and that we have done some. So also an easier work environment for the operator. Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of work to operate a buckle folder continuous feed. You're especially by yourself, if you've ever done that. But it takes a lot of work. So we were thinking, make it easier on the operator. So that's currently was the thought process for the pallet feeding. Make it easier to feed, and then the automated delivery there, make it easier for the operator to take off. So also, I talked to several printers around, and it seemed like pallet feeding is probably the way we wanted to go, because we felt we could stack fairly well off the press, and so thinking, why not just move it right into the folder off from the press. So All right, and then also a single machine. So actually thinking to conserve floor space, and yeah, since we mostly do signature work, we were just thinking, how can we do things better? How can we do things faster? And with our current situation. So, and again, how can we, get all the work accomplished in a single shift? All right. So go ahead.
No, I think from a consultative standpoint, MBO, we tend to ask a lot of questions about things in calls rather than just pitching iron. And I think that's more, a much better way to do it from a sales standpoint. And, once Little Mountain talked about these types of goals and where they were, it really pointed to a folder that was what we call a combi folder and putting on some sort of an automated delivery. And what I thought I would do is break in here just a moment and talk. A lot of America has not used combi style folders. They're very prevalent in Europe. Probably 15% or less are combi in the United States. Consequently, though, 80% or thereabouts, maybe 75 or so, are combi style in Europe. The type of folder, it's just different. It's a smaller, more compact device. It has buckle plates in the first section, which we're all very familiar with in America, and it operates very similar to what your normal folders do. Many or most of them have a pallet style feeder instead of a continuous feeder. And then instead of having buckle plates in sections 2 and 3, sorry, this is going to get a little geeky for some of you. So for those of you that know folding, I guess you'll enjoy this. For those of you that not, please don't leave. I'll be done with this in 30 seconds. In the sections 2 and 3, instead of using buckle folders in that area, they use knives. And knives are fixed. They're fixed to the frame. They don't require movement. There's adjustments and head stops to make them fold or not fold, so they're really simpler to set up. There's a lot less moving parts. You can see the whole front end of that folder under that white cover in the picture. That is section 2 and 3 all put together. In the folder that Little Mountain has, there is a knife with, and there is a buckle plate tucked under the knife to give him an extra little bit of ability, and that's very common in the U.S. And then that third section is a single knife, and it can produce all the common signature folds they need. They're very widely used for signature work. Little less popular for direct mail work. There's some special folds, when you do thirds and sixth and fifth folds and those sorts of things that get caught up in the cross folds, not being able to do them. So those may still be buckle requirement folders, but in general, this is a really great small footprint solution, and it's very fast make ready. And in general, I'm going to say one thing about a combi folder from an engineering standpoint. The knife folder principle moves the sheet through the machine without ever letting go of it. In other words, the rollers, the belts, the pressure, and things that are set up to fold the paper really never let go of the sheet, so you maintain control of it. And that's usually a really good method to engineer a system. In a buckle plate machine, you buckle fold it, and then it transfers itself onto a roller table and a register table to get realigned. And it literally, flies for a moment, coming off the second unit, going into the second or third unit. It's loose, and it has to be re-registered. And jam-ups can happen, a little re-registration mistake can happen in there, and that's just an inherent principle of a buckle machine. So that's removed on a combi folder. So if you can put these types of folders to use, especially in a signature environment, they are really a big advantage. We can talk more about that in Q&A, or you can talk to us further offline. I think that's about as geeky as I'd like to get before we lose people on in the audience. But general principles of this type of machine, when they go automated. The RS folder, the K8RS folder that they purchased it and installed at Little Mountain, it's a one operator machine. It's known for fast make ready, and that's literally a 10-15 minute make ready is all you need on most folds. It will run up to 17,900 sheets on a 2335 form. And that fit them perfectly well also because they had a press that was a 37-inch wide press, I believe. That's right, isn't it, Wes? I believe you had a 37-inch form press. So
yes, that is correct.
That fit that sheet size just perfectly. The pallet feeding, that's a really great way to remove an operator from having to do things like loading a continuous feeder. That's a very labor-intensive process, and it's hard on the arms and the wrists and the elbows. So that getting away from that continuous feed's a big deal. It's got a great interface on it that it's more of a graphic type interface, so it's easier to teach people when you can see a picture of what you want to fold and you just hit a button, as opposed to having to just intrinsically know that you have to set all the pieces and parts at certain numbers to get the fold you want. And then it's completely wide open. You can see in the knife folding in 2 and 3 picture all the way to the right. If there is the inevitable jam and a piece of paper gets caught, it's not hard to unclog it. You hit a couple of levers and that whole area opens wide up and the inner workings remove themselves. You grab the paper and like a drawer, you close it again and move on. And then I put an asterisk by the automated delivery. There's a ton of different deliveries we offer for different things. But this in the industry is probably the biggest choke point out there. In the 90s and the 2000s, when a lot of these folders are still running, it was really popular to put on a tiny little 16-inch, 24-inch little shingle table type delivery on the end of it. And quite frankly, the operators just won't run it at full speed. The folders can run fast, but they're working themselves to death if they are trying to run that folder at 8,000 or 9,000 an hour all day long. They just can't keep up with it. And eventually they just turn the machine down to 4,000 or 5,000, 6,000 an hour and try to maintain that for an 8 or 10 hour day. And I think Wes said that too. You go out and do that every day, and that's tough. So putting on a nice delivery that stacks and kicks out at high speeds where you can manage it, and it's got a little dwell time for you to do your paperwork if you need it, punch your buttons, make the adjustment, check quality, make sure things are right. That's the type of delivery you need in today's market. You've got to spend that extra bit in that area, not just the folder. So you'll see a video of this in a few minutes. We're going to play production live in his building, and you'll see how the operator can interface with that. I think I'll let Wes tell you some of the things that the operators themselves liked most about the machine.
Yeah, so one of the things we liked was the vacuum side guide. And I guess, when you put balls in the side guide, you can get marking and things like that. So one of the things MBO has is a vacuum pull guide, and so that pulls the sheet over quite far and doesn't mark any type of stock. So also one of the things we liked about this particular folder is it can still fold an 8.5 by 11. Now we do have some other folders as well, small folders, which most jobs are run on there for an 8.5 by 11, but at least it gives us a backup for that. Another reason we liked MBO was just the fact that MBO has been around a long time and has been the leader in folding, and so that was another thing we felt good about as well. The slitter shaft cassette there, we liked the way you can get access into these slitter shafts, perf wheels, and just pull out the drawer there. change, work on what you need, or you can actually get extra shafts and just replace them right there and slide the new one in and onto your next job. And like Lance mentioned, the access to the knife area there, very open. If you do have a paper jam, you can, get in and pull out what you need, or you can get into making adjustments, things like that. So one of the things we really liked as well was a connection to our older 8-page unit. So we can actually run our sheet straight through the folder and onto the 8-page unit. Because this is a combi folder, you cannot move the knife very far. You can do trifolds off of the in the second unit, but not if it's too big. Trying to think of a quick example of that. But at some point when it's when you're trying to do about a 6-inch trifold in the second unit, it becomes too big. We also do like 24-page accordion folds for some jobs, and something like that you almost have to run into our 8-page unit for the second folds there. All right. So here, Lance, I don't know if you want to jump in here again on just kind of giving the comparisons here. Go ahead. Lance, maybe you want to unmute your mic there.
Thank you. I think I've done that successfully on every webinar so far. Thanks. Yeah, what we've done, we put a little graphical representation together of what it would look like in the building, and I think this really seats it in your head visually. Originally, there were 2 buckle folders, and those are 2 B machines laid out side by side with different configurations. So that's pretty typical. That's about how far they'd be apart, roughly. Now, there's all kinds of different arrangements of how to do that, but generally you're taking up about that 800 square foot to put 2 machines together in a square. There's going to be pallets laying around and people moving and such. So just measuring the iron, that gives you kind of a decent representative look at what it's going to be in the building. And those machines usually took, now they may be only running them one at a time if they left them set up for 8s and 16s. They may have 1 crew that moves back and forth the machines, sometimes 2 crews, depending upon if they needed overtime. But so you had 1 or 2 operators per machine, sometimes a little more, depending upon what they happened if they were trying to run both machines. And then generally, because of those small deliveries and the way the machines were in their age, they were running somewhere in the 5,000 to 8,000 sheets an hour, and that's kind of their production. And they had fairly long make-readies if they had to change anything. Now, if they got lucky and they moved a 16 directly to the machine and it fit perfectly, you're great. If it wasn't exactly a 16 and it had to be, changed or trimmed or whatever, then you started looking at these make-readies that were fairly appreciable. And they had some make-ready waste they ran off the press using overrun percentages that I'll just say higher than they are now because they can control that more. So now when you take a look at the next slide, which is a graphics of what the new machine is, you can see how much different it really is. And this is a 1-operator machine. They load the pallet in. The operator sets the machine up on the graphical interface. And then once he starts the machine, he can do his quality checks as they go. And he'll grab stacks or grab pieces, take a look at them. And the delivery gives him that time to do that work. Typically, you're looking at, let's say 15-minute make-readies. I think things could go anywhere as low from 10. And maybe you could go up to 30 minutes if, on a bad job that needs something special. But generally, as a rule of thumb, I think 15 minutes, 20 minutes, somewhere in that range is probably very reasonable. So the make-ready waste was lower. They ended up using a little bit less press overrun requirement, and it ended up as a greener solution, which I think we're all trying to do. And there you can see that space reduction. If you calculate those numbers out, you end up with roughly 400. The other one was about 800. So in the same space, with the same productivity, with less people, you cut your space in half. I think that'll give you a good graphic to remember this technique by. And actually, that wouldn't have been so nice had it been another buckle folder. Although everything would have come down and those speeds would have been up, space would have been a little more. And the make-readies, I would challenge a 10-minute make-ready on a buckle folder. If you're changing from a 2-up-8 and you run out to a 3-section 16, that's a little bit longer than 10 minutes, which a combi folder can do that one pretty easy. So we do have a few minutes left. I think we have a production video which could answer some more of questions and give you a good visual on this. And if everybody else is okay with any more comments, I'll go ahead and run the video. Okay, Mark, I think we're done with the material we had, and I still think, luckily, we have a little bit of time left at the end. If you have any questions, I think we're ready.
Yeah, a few have come in. Wes, this question is for you. They want to know if your press is using conventional inks, and if so, do you anticipate moving to UV or energy curable inks in the press room? And how do you think this will impact, or what effect do you think it'll have on your finishing processes?
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges we do have, we are using, yes, we are using conventional inks. One of the things we are looking at is UV, and I think it would help us with faster turnaround times. Also, you know, at times we do have, you know, offsetting or sheet stick, and we do have a pile turner to help with that. Oftentimes we do air up the loads before we put it on the folder, or at least, you know, to get things more in line. And so that does help with some of that. But yeah, I think UV will definitely help. Just with no powder in the finishing equipment, and but that is something we are looking at this time. But it's something that we actually hope to maybe move into within the next year or so here, and I think it'll just increase our finishing speed.
Okay. Why did you choose the auto versus manual option on your new MBO folder? Wes?
Well, again, you know, faster job, make ready, faster setups. One of the things that, yeah, and less waste, again. Because once we have a job stored in the queue, we can move to that, you know, that stored job, and hopefully we use a lot less waste. Currently, I was just thinking about a job that we were busy. I decided to outsource it. It was a fairly large job, and I got a few quotes from some printers, and I was just amazed at the fact that between their presses and their older folding equipment, they needed 15,000 more sheets of paper than what I would have used for the job. And so there again, just looking at automation in the press room and in the finishing helps to save paper, save waste, and faster make ready time, and just get the job out the door faster. So, and also, you know, with the labor shortages that I mentioned earlier, it helps with younger people to be able to pick something up than doing everything manually. So,
you know, in a typical 8-hour shift, like how much time do you think that option saves your operators? Can you give us a ballpark figure? Wes?
Well, I think it saves a lot of time. I mean, if they have an hour to do something else, yeah, I'm not sure. My guess is automation saves a couple hours in an 8-hour shift. That's what I would say.
Right.
Hey, Mark.
Well, you know, Wes, you mentioned about paper shortage, you know, waiting 3 months to get paper and the customer wants a job in 2 weeks. Do you see any, you know, and I hear that from so many printers with the difficulty in getting paper stocks. Do you see that improving at all, or is it maybe even getting worse?
Well, I hope it doesn't get worse. At this time, I think it's going to improve some. We're seeing, you know, containers of paper becoming available. So one of the things we did to help with this when we heard about it, we actually increased our inventory by about 5 times. So currently we were using, or our inventory had been around 60,000 and now it's at 300. Now we've been able to maintain it at 300. But you know, as paper becomes available that we project that we're going to need in the next, 3 months, we buy it. So I don't know if it's going to get worse or not, but we currently have a fair amount of stocks that there are some stock we don't have anything of, and sometimes we have to just, tell the customer that we don't have this, but we can do it on this for you, and I think that works for the most part. So that's how we've dealt with it.
Lance, you talk to a lot of printers. I mean, what are you hearing in terms of this whole paper? And really, it's a supply chain issue. It's not even just paper. I mean, it's ink. It's it's the whole continuum of materials that printers need to get their jobs done. What kind of feedback are you hearing?
Well, we were just at the Inkjet Summit also last week. We were at the Packaging Summit 2 weeks ago, and we heard that same comment everywhere. There doesn't seem to be any magic. What Wesley said about offering an alternative seems to be very popular. Buying whatever quota amount you're allowed, for sure. Nobody is saying, no, I don't want any paper today. Everybody buys it and they're putting it in, and then they hope they pick right. And I think customers seem to be, as long as it's close, they seem to be fairly willing to change. And I think, the printers seem to be making good selections. That's what I've heard. Using less of it, for sure, is one way. I think that's a kind of a silly comment, but using less on a run, if you can save 2, 3, 5% from what you were doing last time because of waste and methods and such, you do that over the course of a month or 6 months, your tonnage actually goes down. It's very appreciable. I think those are the big ones, Mark, that we heard.
Yeah. Well, as a follow-up to that, Lance, how's MBO handling the your warehousing and parts inventory for replacement parts? Because obviously, your customers need those parts right away, and some of those parts may be coming from overseas. How are you responding to that?
We've actually been doing well. It was a challenge from a management standpoint. You had to. We went overboard, pretty much like what Wesley was talking about with paper. We went overboard early in the year. Over ordering in our ERP system, moving the triggers up, and making sure the most common parts were over ordered so that we're prepared for shortages and stuff. And that worked for the most part. I think the only time we're seeing real issues is when we have a ton of legacy machines out of there, and something that was built in the 80s or something, or the 90s or the early 2000s, that they're doing a rebuild and they need a frame piece or some really specialized piece. Of course, now that's going to be a challenge. The factory is still running; it's still doing well. So we can still get it. It might just be a little delayed, but I think those are more the problems than the consumables and the parts that need to keep you running.
All right. Well, unfortunately, it looks like we're just about running out of time. And Wes, I want to thank you for giving us the history of fish wrapping, where that came from. And it would break my heart to think that any printers out there are using old copies of printing impressions to wrap their fish, but hopefully that's not the case. Nevertheless, on behalf of Printing Impressions and MBO America, I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar, and especially to Wes and Lance for their excellent presentations. Be sure to check out our webinar page to get information on all our archived and upcoming webinars. If you just take a minute to fill out the brief feedback survey that will appear on your screen next, we would be most grateful. Your feedback will influence the webinars we bring you in the future. Hope to see you at the next Printing Impressions webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.